So in this question, we decide if the line graphs of each pair of the rules would be parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So two lines are parallel only when the gradients are the same. They are perpendicular if the gradients multiply to give you -1, or one of the gradients is the negative reciprocal of the other gradient. So in question A, we've got a gradient of 2 and 2. They're exactly the same. So what that means is that they're parallel. So I'm just going to write here, parallel. Okay, I'm just going to write parallel for now. Then for question B, we've got a gradient of 3 and a gradient of -1/3. Then when you do the gradient of 3 times -1/3 on your calculator, it gives you -1. So what that means is it's perpendicular. Okay, how you can also tell is that the gradient of 3 is 3/1, and when you swap that around and make that from positive to negative, it does give you this gradient. So you can straight away tell they are perpendicular because of that relationship. Then for C, okay, let's have a look at C. So for C, we've got a gradient of 5 and 6. They're not the same, so they're not parallel. They don't times to give you -1. They times to give you 30. So what we say, it's neither parallel or perpendicular. So we say neither. Then for D, let me just make this a little bit bigger. Actually, a bit small. All right. So for part D of gradient is -4 and 1/5. They are not the same. And let's see what they multiply to give you. -4 times 1/5 gives you -4 and 5. That is not -1. So what that means is that it's neither perpendicular or parallel. Now let's have a look at E. They both have a gradient of 3. So that means they are parallel. F. They both have a gradient of half. So what that means is they are parallel. They have the same gradients. G, gradient of -2/3 and gradient of 2 and 3. They are not the same, but they're opposite in sign. But when you multiply them, they give you -4/9. So they don't give you -1. The thing that's missing is that this gradient is not the reciprocal of this one. So it's neither parallel or nor perpendicular. Question H, a gradient of -4 and a gradient of 1 that's invisible. -4 and 1 are not parallel because they're not the same gradients. So do they times to give you -1 also? No, they don't, because it's -4. So we say it's not parallel, not perpendicular, so it's neither. Then, in question I, we've got a gradient of -3/7 and gradient of 7/3. They're not the same, so they're not parallel, but they do times together to give you -1. These two cancel, which means we have 1s everywhere, and that will give you -1. Okay? They are also reciprocals of each other. You can see that. Okay? 3 and 7 becomes 7 and 3 when you switch this around, and they're opposite signs to each other, so they should times to give you -1. So they are perpendicular. Whereas for question J, we've got a gradient of -8 and 1/8. So if you multiply those, they do give you -1. Okay, because these two cancel. So you've got negative on one left. So that means they are perpendicular and not parallel.